Marcus called, drunk, asking Grace to pick him up. In the taxi, a groggy Marcus suddenly spoke. You really look like a frumpy wife now. Grace's hand, tapping to pay for the fare, trembled before she could even react. Then she heard him continue. You used to be the State University's beauty queen, but now you're old. You can't even compare to Tiffany. Ultimately, you're just like our family's housekeeper. What right do you have to criticize her? His words, using alcohol as an excuse, sent a chill through Grace, like falling into an ice cellar. She suddenly realized he was angry with her for having criticized his adopted sister a few days prior for eating all of the expensive gourmet dessert Grace had bought, not even leaving any for Grace's 8-year-old son. All right. So this was his true feeling, was it? Then let's get a divorce. One, just because I drank too much and said a few drunken words. You want a divorce? Marcus, sober now, sat on the sofa, looking at Grace incredulously. Yes. Grace clutched the handle of her suitcase and pushed the already signed divorce papers towards him. Kevin, Grace's son, who was building blocks on the balcony, looked up and frowned at her. Mom, can you please stop threatening Dad with divorce? Dad's not wrong. You're really not as pretty as Aunt. The son Grace had fiercely protected had now sided with his father, turning to despise her. Grace and Marcus had been married for 10 years, and their combined income was barely $5,000 a month. A family of 6 was squeezed into a cramped 900 square foot apartment, and his parents had no retirement savings. The expensive gourmet dessert was something Kevin had talked about for a long time before Grace finally gritted her teeth and bought it. She had planned to save it for him to eat after school, but when she picked him up and opened the refrigerator, the dessert was gone. Tiffany, Marcus's adopted sister, came out of her bedroom with an empty plate and shrugged nonchalantly. Oh, sorry, Grace, the dessert was so good, I accidentally ate it all. Although was unhappy, she only said, it was an expensive gourmet dessert. You should have at least left some for Kevin, if not for anyone else. With just that one sentence, Tiffany's eyes welled up, as if she'd been deeply wronged. When came home from work, she immediately complained to her brother. Brother, Grace bought that dessert, and I just ate a little, but she was so mean to me. At the time, Marcus had only given Grace a reproving glance, saying nothing, but he had held onto it until now. Grace, is breakfast ready? I'm going shopping with friends later. Tiffany walked out of her bedroom in her pajamas, yawning. Aunt, have my eggs and milk. Kevin immediately held up the eggs and milk Grace had prepared for him, trying to please her. Henry and Margaret, who had been pretending to be deaf and mute, immediately put on smiling faces. Margaret, who was watering a houseplant, even stepped forward to ask, what do you want to eat? Mom will make it for you today. Their legs seemed quite agile now. Last time Marcus was away on a business trip, Grace had a fever of 104 degrees, and Margaret had still dragged her out of bed to make chicken soup with dumplings for Henry. After 10 years of dedicating herself to this family, Grace was still an outsider to them. To Aunt, our school is having a family sports event in a few days. Will you and my dad come with me then? Kevin looked eagerly at Tiffany. Tiffany glanced at Grace, intentionally, then touched Kevin's face. Your mom should go with you for the family sports event, Kevin. If Tiffany goes, your mom will get angry. Kevin immediately looked at Grace with disgust. I don't want her to go. She's a shoe sales associate at a department store. I'd be embarrassed if my classmates asked me about it. So, in her own son's eyes, Grace's job was a source of shame for him. Margaret also said, you graduated from a prestigious university and worked at a bank. If you go to Kevin's family sports event, even the teachers will think highly of Kevin. You should go. Grace won't be unhappy. Grace turned to look at Marcus, who sat motionless on the sofa. His son and his mother were speaking about Grace this way. As her husband, shouldn't he stand up and say something to defend her? If he would only speak up for her then. Marcus stood up and walked towards Grace, cupping her face, and said softly, all right, stop this. See, I'm not the only one who thinks you can't compare to Tiffany. Children are the most honest. You should believe what he says, right? But don't worry, we don't look down on you. As long as you treat Tiffany better in the future and stop targeting her, we can still forgive you. His seemingly forgiving words felt like a blunt knife, tearing Grace's heart open, leaving it bleeding. Grace furiously pushed Marcus away and slapped the divorce papers into his chest. This divorce is happening. Marcus was pushed back a step by Grace's sudden strength, bumping into Henry's fish tank. With a crash, the fish tank shattered. The prized koi fish that Henry tended to like royalty fell onto the floor. Because it was out of water, it flopped around twice before stopping. deprived of oxygen. Henry, who had been feeding the fish, was utterly heartbroken at the sight. He slapped Grace, sending her to the floor. Just because Tiffany ate your dessert the other day, you're making a big deal out of it this morning. And you killed my fish. Do you really have to make our whole family miserable to be satisfied? If you want a divorce, then get one. Let's see where a 30-something woman like you will go without my son. Grace fell to the ground, her palm landing on the broken glass, bleeding profusely. Kevin and Tiffany were protected by Margaret, keeping far away from Grace. Marcus's back hurt from the collision, and his brows were tightly furrowed, as if Grace were a difficult, irrational madwoman. Grace suddenly felt her 10 years of marriage were utterly ridiculous, and she stared at them with bitter hatred. Margaret finally relented, stepping forward to help Grace up, and gently persuaded her. Tell me, is one dessert really worth making such a fuss over? You're an orphan, and you have no family to support you. Where will you go if you leave Marcus? You've been with Marcus for 10 years, and he's about to be promoted to department head. Even if he said something wrong, there's no need to impulsively divorce him, is there? All right. Even if Mom was wrong, Mom didn't manage her son well. Mom apologizes to you. Isn't that enough? Saying this, she even bowed to Grace. But before her head could dip, Marcus pulled her back up. Mom, you don't need to humble yourself in front of her. If she wants a divorce, let her have it. 3 At that moment, Tiffany also walked over. Grace, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have eaten the dessert you bought last time. Please don't argue with my brother. As long as you 3 are well, I can move out and rent an apartment. Saying this, she turned away, her eyes red and filled with an injured expression. Marcus and Margaret immediately grabbed her, even rushed into her embrace. Aunt, please don't leave. Kevin likes Aunt. Kevin's dessert can all be for Aunt. It was a touching scene of farewell, but Grace couldn't be bothered to watch her act. She only urged Marcus, sign it. She stays. I leave. Tiffany was adopted by Margaret. Margaret had always wanted a daughter, but she had been ill when she was young, which affected her health. After giving birth to Marcus, she couldn't have any more children. Although wasn't their biological child, she had been pampered since childhood. Grace, having grown up in an orphanage, had developed a people-pleasing personality, hoping to quickly integrate into this family. So from the first day she married in, not only did she have to manage the family's food, clothing, housing, and transportation, she also had to find a job and earn money with Marcus to support the family. Even when she was 8 months pregnant, she didn't dare to take time off. After the baby was born and she finished her confinement month, she immediately returned to work. Her in-laws took care of the child during the day. Grace didn't know how they had raised him, but as he grew older, he increasingly seemed to dislike her, growing closer to his aunt instead. Grace had thought about repairing her relationship with him, but he always looked down on her. Her constant efforts to please them only made them take advantage of her more. Grace was tired. She no longer wanted to compromise. If they thought it was about the expensive gourmet dessert, then so be it. Seeing this, Tiffany curled her lips, a triumphant smile playing on her face. Why was she smiling? Did she think she had one? That she had finally driven Grace away? Grace pursed her lips, turned, and brought a medicine cabinet from the room, handing it to Tiffany. The cabinet opened, revealing various basic medications the elderly couple took daily. Henry has diabetes and high blood pressure, and Margaret has rheumatoid arthritis and cervical spondylosis. The medicines here are quite specific. The usage is all written on them. They can't read it, so remember to give it to them every day. Tiffany's eyes widened instantly, her face clearly showing annoyance. Grace pretended not to notice and handed Marcus a class schedule. This lists Kevin's daily classes. The school has a burden reduction program, so remember to pack his required textbooks for school every day. The various tutoring classes are also listed here, so remember to take him on time. Marcus stared at the densely packed class schedule, instinctively frowning. Grace turned her gaze to Margaret, pointing to a sticky note on the refrigerator. This lists everyone's dietary restrictions. Kevin is allergic to high-protein foods, so things like legumes and shrimp are absolutely forbidden. Henry has high blood sugar and high cholesterol. He can't eat greasy foods at all. Marcus has a stomach condition, so you must specifically prepare a bowl of millet porridge for him for breakfast. Margaret's face crumpled into a bitter gourd expression. Grace urged again, sign it, Marcus. For Marcus gritted his teeth, about to put pen to paper. Margaret immediately rushed forward to stop him. You can't sign. Henry remained tight-lipped. Tiffany lowered her head. looking on the verge of tears. Seeing this, Kevin, like a little tiger, clenched his fists and charged at Grace. Bad woman, I'll beat you for bullying Aunt over a dessert. Just leave. I can't wait for you to go. I don't even want you as my mom. He punched Grace, again and again. They weren't strong, but they tore Grace's heart to shreds. Marcus pulled Kevin away, sternly admonishing him. Kevin, don't treat your mom like that. Can't you see she's angry and wants to divorce me? Apologize to your mom right now. Kevin jutted out his neck. I won't apologize. She made Aunt cry. She's a bad woman. Make her leave. At that moment, Tiffany knelt down, stroked Kevin's head, and said gently, Kevin, hurry and apologize to your mom, otherwise, your mom will blame Aunt for her divorce. Just do it to help Aunt, okay? Kevin, who had been raging moments before, was now as quiet as a kitten. After hearing Tiffany's words, he nodded, looked at Grace, and said reluctantly, I'm sorry, all right. Grace drew a sharp breath. This was the child she had carried for 10 months. What more could she expect? Perhaps was just destined to have little familial connection. Grace couldn't help but stare intently at Kevin for a long moment, then gritted her teeth and said, Kevin, you're actually quite an ungrateful brat. Kevin was young, but he acutely sensed that these were not kind words. Everyone else's expressions changed. Margaret pulled Kevin into her arms. Marcus, his face contorted, pointed at Grace and raged, You vicious woman. How can you speak about your own son like that? Then Henry, standing with his hands behind his back like the head of the household, spoke. Grace, I think you've harbored resentment for a long time, and you're just using this as an excuse to drive Tiffany out of our home. Since apologizing to you hasn't worked, if you want to leave, then go. But let me make one thing clear beforehand. This house was bought by me and your mother. You can forget about getting even a single share. And is our grandson, a member of the He family. Custody rightly belongs to the He family. You must leave with nothing. Grace laughed. As if I want this ungrateful brat. This home isn't mine, and I don't need any of it. She had nothing to begin with, and they were still worried she'd cling to things. That was enough. Hearing this, Marcus readily signed the papers and shoved the divorce papers at Grace. Take it. The economy is bad out there now. As an orphan, I wonder how you'll survive. If you regret it, don't expect me to take you back. Kevin also gritted his teeth and said, I won't tell anyone you're my mom. The moment Grace received the divorce papers, it felt as if a heavy stone had finally been lifted from her heart. The parting she had anticipated brought no pain, but rather a sense of relief. Tiffany couldn't hide the triumph in her eyes. Grace, it's not for me to say, but you're a shoe sales associate. Without my brother, you probably won't last a day. Grace gave a cold laugh. A shoe sales associate? Grace chose to sell shoes. It wasn't all she could do. In terms of ability, she could run circles around Tiffany. So, without another word, Grace stormed out of the house, dragging her suitcase. Wait. Someone chased after her. Margaret, who was usually somewhat pleasant, now had a cold expression, as if Grace owed her $500,000. I remember Marcus gave you a gold bracelet last month for your birthday, didn't he? Gold prices are so high now. That bracelet is worth $50,000. Did you just take it without a word? Saying this, she directly reached out to snatch Grace's suitcase. With a ripping sound, the zipper opened and Grace's belongings were scattered everywhere. Even her undergarments were exposed, drawing out the neighbors to watch. What bracelet? There's no such thing. Don't go through my things. Grace's face turned beet red with anger, and she pulled hard at Margaret, accidentally making her fall to the ground. Margaret had rummaged through all Grace's things, but the bracelet wasn't there, so she immediately beat the ground and cried, shameless. This woman divorced my son and still hid the gold bracelet he gave her. The neighbors buzzed with discussion. At that moment, Tiffany, who had come out after them, quickly pulled down her sleeve to hide the gold bracelet on her wrist. Marcus quickly walked to his mother and helped her up. Mom, what are you doing? I'll explain about the bracelet when we get back inside. Saying this, he tried to help his mother back into the house. Grace quickly gathered her belongings and blocked their way. Wait, you just said your son gave me a gold bracelet for my birthday, right? Margaret craned her neck. Of course. Then do you remember what style it was, and how much it weighed? Maybe I can recall it then. Hearing this, Margaret immediately said, it was a simple, vintage-style gold band, a full 50 grams. My son sweet-talked me into going with him to buy it, saying it was for your birthday gift. My son was so good to you, and you still want to divorce him. You're simply ungrateful. After she finished speaking, Grace seized Tiffany's wrist and rolled up her sleeve. Are you talking about this one? Does anyone have a jewelry scale I can borrow to weigh this? Immediately, a neighbor, eager for gossip, raised a hand. I do. Soon, the jewelry scale was brought over. When weighed, it was exactly 50 grams. Margaret was too stunned to speak. Marcus looked like he wanted to disappear. See clearly, the gold bracelet your son bought is on your adopted daughter's wrist. He never gave it to me. I was just a front for him. With that, Grace grabbed her suitcase from the ground, pushed it, and walked away. Behind her, the neighbors whispered excitedly, "Oh my goodness. This family's son and his adopted daughter. Tsk. No wonder his wife divorced him. Who could accept that? It's too messy. They should just stick together and not ruin other families' daughters." Margaret flew into a rage, pointing at the neighbors and yelling, "What nonsense are you talking? Don't you have anything better to do? All of you, get out of here." When married Marcus, she had nothing now. 10 years later, she still had nothing. It was scorching hot on the street. The bright sun overhead made it difficult for Grace to keep her eyes open. The sweat pouring down her face like a waterfall seemed to be a punishment for her past foolishness. Grace dragged her suitcase and looked through several real estate agents, finally renting a rundown, small 2-bedroom apartment for $1,000 a month. The apartment had been empty for a long time and had a strong musty smell. But none of this deterred Grace when she used to sell shoes at the department store. The dirty living room and bedroom would be waiting for her to clean every night after work. Grace spent 4 hours wiping down the rental apartment, inside and out, making the whole place look brand new. After taking a shower and lying in bed, she fell soundly asleep without really thinking about the divorce. Since she had applied for time off from the department store, she didn't set an alarm. She woke up at 10 in the morning. Since getting married, this was probably the first time Grace had slept in. Usually, she had to work during the week, and weekend classes for Kevin meant she had to get up early. Severe sleep deprivation meant Grace relied on coffee to get by. She stretched, sleeping, and felt so good. Grace picked up her phone from the nightstand and opened her social media feed. The first post was from Tiffany. Tiffany was at an amusement park with Marcus and Kevin, looking very much like a happy family of 3. The caption read, "It feels so good to be with family, like being a child again. My brother is just my brother, and no one can take him away." Grace quietly liked the post, then exited the social media feed. The brand manager at Grace's company had transferred, and the regional manager wanted to choose one of the long-term employees to be the new manager. He recognized Grace's abilities and invited her to talk. "You're our store's top salesperson if you were to become the brand manager." Grace bowed to him, interrupting, "Thank you for the manager's kindness, but I've decided. I'm resigning." The manager was taken aback. "What did you say? You're resigning now?" Grace nodded. "I originally took this job because the department store was close to home, and the working hours made it convenient for me to pick up and drop off my child. But now I'm divorced. I graduated with a degree in AI engineering. From now on, I want to do something I'm passionate about." After understanding Grace's intentions, the manager looked at her with admiration. "All right, in that case, I wish you success." In fact, while she was selling shoes, Grace had been using her free time to work on an AI-powered customer service system. It was still being optimized. Grace spent another half a month perfecting the system, then sold it to a Fortune 500 company for $3 million. She was also hired by the company as an algorithm engineer, earning a high 6-figure salary around $150,000 a year. Grace bought a pre-owned condo for a solid price around $300,000. Although it was only 800 square feet, its location was excellent, close to her company, making commuting easy. On the first day of moving into her new home, Grace invited 2 of her good friends from college for a housewarming party. Each of them brought Grace an expensive gourmet dessert. It tasted delicious, and Grace didn't have to worry about saving any for anyone else. The 3 of them cozied up on the sofa, drinking wine, watching a movie, and reminiscing about the past. It was a long-lost sense of ease. "Oh, so you really divorced Marcus? Weren't you 2 madly in love back in college? I heard he got promoted to manager, making a decent salary, around $13,000 a month, a few days ago. He even posted on his social media feed that he took his adopted sister to a fancy restaurant that cost $200 per person to celebrate. I wonder who he's trying to provoke. A fancy restaurant that costs $200 per person?" Marcus had never taken Grace there once, but now Grace was capable of going herself. Grace jumped off the sofa, cleared the wine bottles and trash from the coffee table, and went downstairs to throw them away. To her surprise, she ran into Marcus and Tiffany, who were looking at apartments in the complex. 7 The agent said, "There's a 1,000 square foot, 3-bedroom unit in this complex for only $3 million. If you put down $80,000, the rest can be financed." Tiffany's eyes immediately lit up. "That's great. We'll take this one then." Marcus couldn't help but whisper to her, "But you've only been working for a year. Where would you get $80,000 for a down payment?" Tiffany's eyes widened. "Aren't you and Mom going to contribute?" Marcus looked troubled. "I just got promoted to manager. Where would I get that much money? You know about Mom and Dad, they have a lot of chronic illnesses, and their medications cost a lot every month." Tiffany immediately hugged Marcus's arm and pouted. "I know, but I really want to have my own place. Then I'll have confidence when I get married. You don't want my future boyfriend's family to look down on me, do you?" Marcus's heart instantly softened, but he felt utterly helpless. At that moment, Tiffany caught sight of Grace, who was walking to the trash can with wine bottles in hand. "Grace, what are you doing here?" "Oh, I know. Have you fallen so low that you're scavenging for trash in the complex?" Tsk. Marcus followed Tiffany's gaze and also saw Grace, subtly frowning. "I thought you'd be living so well after leaving me. Turns out you're this down on your luck. You even have to scavenge after work. Aren't you embarrassed? Come on, apologize to me now. Considering you're Kevin's biological mother, I might consider getting back together with you." What utter garbage. Grace opened the trash can lid, tossed her trash in, and clapped her hands clean. "Who told you I was here scavenging for trash? I'm an owner here." At this, Marcus and Tiffany both froze, then burst into unreserved laughter. Tiffany even pointed at Grace with a look of disdain. "An owner? Do you really think you're worthy? Do you know what the prices are like here? You couldn't afford it if you sold shoes your whole life." Marcus held back a laugh. "All right. I know you care about appearances, but stop pretending. How much money you have? I know perfectly well. Kevin's studies have fallen behind a lot recently. Teachers keep calling me about every little thing. It's perfect if you come back now." Just as he finished speaking, a surprised voice rang out. "Ms. Lin?" It was the real estate agent who was showing Marcus and Tiffany the apartment, and who had also previously closed the deal with Grace. "I thought it looked like you. It really is you. How do you like the apartment you bought?" At this, the smiles on Marcus and Tiffany's faces froze. Tiffany asked the agent incredulously, "What did you say? She really bought a house? How much was the down payment? It couldn't have been just 10,000, could it?" The agent shook his head. "No, Ms. Lin paid in full. The total price was $2 million. "What?" Tiffany's eyes widened, and she immediately rushed over to Grace. Her finger was practically poking Grace's face. "You concealed assets during the marriage, didn't you? How could you possibly earn so much money in just half a year after the divorce?" Saying this, she directly grabbed Grace's arm. "Hurry up and spit out my brother's money." "My brother's money is for my house." Grace pushed her away. "Your brother's money isn't even enough to support your family." Tiffany was pushed back, stumbling, and knocked over the trash can behind her, landing on her rear in the pile of garbage. The stench was unbearable. "Ah, it stinks. Brother. Grace is bullying me." Marcus immediately rushed forward, grabbed Grace's hair, and slapped her face twice. "How dare you bully Tiffany? Don't you want to live?" Saying this, he slapped her 2 more times. Grace's cheeks were swollen, and her mouth was bleeding from the beating. Just then, the community security guards rushed over. Grace immediately cried for help. "I'm an owner here. Please call the police for me. Someone is assaulting me." One of the security guards rushed up and pulled Grace away from Marcus, while the other pulled out his phone to call the police. A short while later, the police arrived. Since the apartment complex had surveillance cameras, it was clear that Marcus had initiated the assault, so he was taken to the police station for investigation. Grace's eardrum was perforated, and she refused to settle or forgive, demanding that he be detained for 10 days, fined $1,000, and ordered to pay $30,000 in damages. Marcus's mother called. "You really shouldn't be so stubborn. Marcus just became a manager. And now he has a criminal record. You're going to ruin him. Even if you don't think for him, you should think for Kevin. You're his biological mother." Grace's perforated eardrum buzzed like a fly. She couldn't hear what Margaret was saying, so she hung up the phone. On the second morning Grace was in the hospital, Margaret's phone call came again. When didn't answer, they switched to Kevin's smartwatch to call. As soon as Grace answered, Margaret's wailing voice came through. "Oh no, Kevin accidentally drank some soy milk. His throat swelled up. and he was rushed to the children's hospital. Marcus was still being held at the police station, and Grace was Kevin's only guardian, so she immediately rushed to the hospital. At the emergency room entrance, Henry and Margaret were practically frantic, only stood casually to the side, arms crossed. Looking impatient, Margaret couldn't help but say to her, "You knew Kevin had a high-protein allergy. Why did you give him soy milk?" Tiffany looked indifferent. "It was so early in the morning. How could I get up to cook for him? I just bought a cup of soy milk on the way to school. What allergy?" In my opinion, Grace just made him too delicate before. He'll be fine if he eats it more often. Margaret's chest tightened with anger, seeing arrive. She quickly fell silent. Grace asked them, "What exactly happened?" Tiffany was about to speak, but Margaret quickly pulled her behind her. "Kevin insisted on drinking soy milk behind our backs, and then he had an allergic reaction." Grace's gaze went past Margaret, directly to Tiffany. "Do you really think I'm deaf? You're the one who gave my son soy milk, aren't you?" Tiffany's expression stiffened. "You don't take care of your own son, and I'm wrong for helping out?" Grace raised her hand and slapped her. "Kevin is 8 years old, as his aunt. There's no way you wouldn't know he can't drink soy milk." Tiffany covered her face and yelled furiously. "So what if I knew? I just wanted to get back at you. I wanted that little brat to die. Why should he spend my brother's money, making my brother unable to buy me a house?" Just then, the ward door opened, and Kevin, who was out of danger, was wheeled out. He stared wide-eyed, disbelievingly at Tiffany. "Aunt, you." And Margaret looked as if they had been struck by lightning. "Tiffany, how could you think like that?" Tiffany realized she had spoken out of turn and hastily tried to pull Margaret's sleeve. "Mom, I didn't mean it like that. I was just so angry a moment ago. I spoke without thinking, that's why." However, all explanations seemed so futile. Henry was even more heartbroken. "We treated you like our own daughter, and yet you tried to kill our grandson. Get out of here. We never want to see you again." Tiffany turned to grab Henry's hand. "Dad, I'm not." "Get out." Henry raised his hand and pushed Tiffany to the ground. Tiffany, who had always been spoiled, had never experienced such a cold reception. She immediately scrambled up and burst into harsh laughter, pointing at the elderly couple. All right. You treat me this way for a child from outside the family, you'll definitely regret it." With that, she ran away crying. Margaret, unable to bear it, wanted to go after her, but Henry sternly stopped her. "Don't you dare." Grace stayed in the hospital to care for Kevin for 2 days. Perhaps his words had hit him hard, as he remained somewhat gloomy. As got water to wipe his hands and face, he spoke in a subdued voice. "Mom, I was wrong. Can you forgive me? I shouldn't have looked down on you because of Aunt. You're the best person in the world to me. You've been taking care of me in the hospital for so long, you definitely still think of me as your son, right?" Grace sat opposite him, looking into his eyes. "I'm taking care of you because you're still underage, and I have a responsibility to you, but that doesn't mean I've forgiven you. Just like your apology to me doesn't mean you truly think you were wrong. It's because you realized you were deceived by others and you're afraid no one will take care of you anymore. I won't forgive you, and please don't bother me. After all, you're actually not as good as other people's children." Kevin's eyes trembled, but didn't want to delve deeper. She handed the remaining care to Margaret and left the hospital. Grace's new job was tedious yet full of challenges. Working at a large company like Tianji, her colleagues taught her a lot, and Grace felt herself improving every day. One day, after working late, Grace ran into Marcus, who was waiting specifically for her at the apartment complex entrance. It had been a while since they last met, and Marcus had lost a lot of weight. His jacket was draped over his arm. His white shirt was wrinkled, and his chin was covered in stubble. He blocked Grace's path. "Grace, can we talk?" Since the apartment complex entrance was busy, Grace took him to a nearby coffee shop. When the coffee arrived, he stirred it idly with his spoon, looking as if he found it difficult to speak. Grace kept track of the time. "If you don't speak, I'm going home." Marcus hastily grabbed Grace's wrist, making her sit back down, his voice hoarse and unpleasant. "Tiffany found a 50-year-old wealthy businessman. He bought her an apartment, and she hardly comes home now. I lost my job. My dad went to work as a security guard, and my mom went to wash dishes. Kevin now walks to school by himself, and all his tutoring classes have been canceled." Grace looked at him coldly. "So what? Does that have anything to do with me?" Marcus knelt on one knee, holding Grace's hand, refusing to let go. Drawing stares from other patrons in the coffee shop. "What are you doing?" Grace lowered her voice, feeling humiliated. "Grace, I'm sorry for everything in the past. You were with me for 10 years. I really shouldn't have looked down on you. It was only after you left that I understood how much you carried for this family." His voice choked, tears streaming down his face. He genuinely looked repentant, but knew he was only acting this way because he hadn't found anyone better. If he had been promoted, gotten a raise, and had a beautiful woman by his side, he wouldn't have thought of her at all. So pulled her hand away without hesitation. "Not every I'm sorry in this world can be met with an it's okay. You should know, the current you really looks like a stray dog." At these words, Marcus's trembling shoulders froze. He looked up, gazing at Grace incredulously. It seemed at this moment he finally understood how much his words in the taxi had hurt Grace. His eyes quickly reddened, but he couldn't salvage the situation. As his last shred of pride had been trampled underfoot, Grace stopped looking at him, left $100 bill for the bill, grabbed her bag, and walked away. Grace saw Tiffany again at an exclusive club during a company team building event. Tiffany was sitting in a private room, holding the wealthy businessman's arm, accompanying him while he discussed business with several big bosses. One of the big boss's hands kept sliding intentionally under her skirt. After she removed it several times, he still wouldn't give up. Finally, she became enraged. Springing to her feet, "Are you done yet?" The big boss's face changed. He forcefully extinguished his cigar in the ashtray, stood up, and prepared to leave. The wealthy businessman, seeing the deal slip through his fingers, raised his hand and slapped Tiffany across the face. The blow made Tiffany stumble, sending her sprawling onto the coffee table, scattering glass bottles, cups, and other things that shattered all over the floor. "You bitch, what's with the act? A little touch won't make you lose anything. This is what you're for. So why are you afraid of a man touching you? The deal's off, and there's no more house for you. Now get out." He pointed at the door. Tiffany gritted her teeth, stood up, and pulled open the private room door. Walking out, her eyes met Grace's, who was standing just outside the door. "Are you here to gloat?" Tiffany clutched her face, glaring at Grace with venom in her eyes. Grace shrugged, pointing to the next room. "I'm here for a company team building event." Tiffany glanced at the private room next door. "You went to Tianji? Someone like you. You think you're good enough? You're probably just sweeping floors in there, aren't you?" Just then, the door to the private room next door opened, and a colleague from Grace's department greeted her. "Engineer, come on in. We're just waiting for you." Tiffany's expression changed. "They called you engineer?" The colleague volunteered to introduce Grace. "Engineer, the most promising AI engineer in our department." Tiffany felt a searing flush creep across the other side of her face, too. Grace ignored her and went straight into the private room with her colleague. 3 months later, at a class reunion, someone said, "Did you know? Marcus actually married his adopted sister. He just posted their marriage certificate on his social media feed." "No way? Didn't they say his adopted sister was with a wealthy businessman before?" "The wealthy businessman was definitely just messing around with her. When he dumped her, she went back home. She'd already quit her old bank job, so she had to find someone to support her, right? But their relationship, is that even appropriate?" "What's inappropriate about it? I heard Marcus was drunk, and Tiffany threw herself at him, then found out she was pregnant, so they just got their marriage certificate." My best friend nudged Grace's arm. You're not upset, are you?" Grace tilted her head back and finished the glass of red wine in front of her, then smiled. "What's there to be upset about? Isn't it normal for people to remarry after divorce?" 2 years later, the group decided to transfer Grace to headquarters, and her annual salary increased to over $400,000 a year. The day before Grace left, she was packing things at home. The doorbell, however, rang insistently. Grace put down what she was holding and went to open the door. As soon as the door opened, an older child lunged into Grace's arms. He looked up at Grace, his eyes red and swollen. "Mom, can I come with you?" It took Grace a moment to realize it was Kevin. Grace pulled him to sit in the living room, poured him a glass of water, and asked him, "What's wrong?" Kevin sobbed. "Aunt had a baby brother, and now even Grandpa and Grandma don't love me anymore. They all pick on me, and they want me to give in to my little brother. But why should I? They used to love me. Mom, I don't want to live with them anymore. Please, let me come with you." Grace looked into his eyes and seriously shook her head. "You made your choice back then. I've given you the $5,000 a month in child support on time. It's impossible for me to fight for your custody now." Kevin abruptly stood up, yelling furiously, "Why are you so heartless?" Grace told him, word for word, "Because I can't risk the inherent flaws in his character. so strikingly similar to his father's. The sun was shining brightly on the day Grace left Oakwood. The plane soared above the clouds, with countless mountains stretching out below. Her best friend sent a message. Bombshell news. The child Tiffany gave birth to isn't Marcus. She doesn't even know who the father is. And now the He family is in total chaos. Grace replied, "Don't tell me anything about Marcus anymore." She turned off her phone, tossed it aside, and stretched on the plane. When woke up, she would be starting a new chapter in her life. That's all for today's story. Thank you for listening. This is my channel. The tales I share drawn from life or woven from imagination are meant to offer you connection, reflection, and perhaps solace or newfound strength. If you long to see your own reflection in others' journeys, or seek a glimmer of light within the maze of emotions, subscribe to my channel. Listen with your heart. Explore the stories of life.